Welcome to Promote, Profit, Publish. I'm your host, Juliet Clark, and today's guest, Tom Hazzard's back. So I will introduce him in a few moments, but I want to remind you, we have a big March set up this month for training and, just getting to know authors and how to build that platform. So Revenue Rumble is on March 18th at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. You can register for that over at revenuerumble.com. And it's coaches. We have three great coaches to talk a little bit about really getting into your coaching business and building revenue in a meaningful way. Anthony Jones, who's our LinkedIn specialist, will be there. Gretchen Heido, who is a certified IFC coach. She's actually a train the trainer type of coach, will be there. And she was fabulous in our January training. People said it was the most favorite one they'd ever had. She did a little bit of lead generation. And Rebecca Bertoldi, who coaches people through funnel building and making your funnels more human. So that, again, March 18th, 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. RevenueRumble.com is where you can register. We also have our monthly Go High Level trainings. Rebecca Bertoldi owns her own agency and is really great at Go High Level, which if you haven't tried it, it is so easy. We made the transition over in September and have just been ecstatic about how easy it is. I run a lot of the stuff myself that I couldn't do on the old system because it was too complicated. I didn't have time. So I'm really excited about High Level. She's going to be teaching 3 secrets to streamline your social media marketing. And that's Thursday, March 20th, 2025 at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 Central, 9 Mountain, and 8 Pacific. And you can RSVP for that at ghlmonthly.com. So now that I've got all that out of the way, and we have such a busy month this month, I want to introduce Tom. We're going to talk today about the differences between going through an agency like his, Podetize, for a podcast and using the new YouTube, and which is worth it more, the free or the paid. I'm going to have to say the paid, but we'll let Tom tell us what's really going on with it. Tom Hazzard is a prolific podcaster, co-host of 5 different shows with hundreds of episodes and interviews. As the CTO of Brandcasters, Inc., Podetize.com, he makes it a practice for all executive team, including himself, to start a new podcast every year. That way, the leadership of the organization immediately understands what it is like to podcast today and helps inform the value and development of products and services. In 2018, he started Feed Your Brand, and it's ranked as the 22nd on CIO's list of top entrepreneur podcasts, just one behind industry veteran Pat Flynn. That is very impressive. Before he started the product launch Hazzards with his partner and co-host Tracy Hazzard to serve Amazon sellers and product inventors. Right now in 2021, well, it's not right now, but in 2021, they're in the creation process of 2 new shows, The Next Little Thing and Behind the Next Little Thing, to help podcasters explore show monetization through product sales and affiliation. So I am so excited to have Tom and Tracy. I personally, at full disclosure, I use Podetize for my podcast, and I'm like 340 episodes in. So I've been doing this since 2018, and it made my life so much easier. I have to tell you that. I had my own podcast before that, 2014, 15, and 16, and it was a lot of work, and I didn't enjoy it. And worst of all, it took away from my time as the CEO of this company and the lead generator, the rainmaker. So I do appreciate how they've streamlined this. So stay tuned for my discussion with Tom. Tom, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here to talk about the whole YouTube podcast thing going on. And you just told me something about another area. So thank you. Thank you for coming on to talk about this.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So full transparency, you guys, Podetize is the company that does all of my podcasting. And I had a podcast before, and I can't even tell you how much time it sucked up out of my day. because of all the things that Podetize does for me, that as the rainmaker for this company, my point is I should be generating leads, not delegating or trying to do podcasting myself. So, Tom, talk a little bit about what's going on with YouTube there, what you see out there, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, this is a very interesting time in the evolution of podcasting, and I am going to use that term even as we're talking about YouTube right now. I mean, YouTube has existed for a long time, probably just about as long as podcasts have existed, and maybe YouTube existed even before, but slightly by a year or so, maybe. But today, in 2025, and it's been this way for a decade and going on. Well, there have been a lot of changes that have happened just recently, but YouTube is a destination for podcasters. In fact, there are many podcasters who say they are a podcast, say they have a podcast, and it's only on YouTube. And that's a relatively new development, and it's why even other competitors of YouTube are starting to get into it and embrace podcasters publishing their long form videos of their episodes on their platform. But it is very confusing at this time for podcasters, videocasters, content creators in general, what the best practice is and how to best distribute all your content. It's a little bit of the Wild West, and we're all navigating this in uncertain times just because things are changing so much.
Yeah. And you've become alternative media as well for a lot of
Well,
people. Like you are the media.
yeah, podcasting and now and so for those of you listening to the audio, I'm sort of in air quotes here, podcasting. Okay. I'm going to talk about that for a moment in the context of audio distribution and not video on YouTube or even Spotify starting to dabble in video. Because if your content ever is going to be scrutinized or, censored, taken down, that's only going to happen on YouTube, and it's uncertain what may happen on Spotify because they're pretty new at it. But I can tell you with great certainty, because on Podetize, we have podcasters that are publishing on, very benign topics, and then everything from extreme, political right wing, extreme political left wing, and everything in between.
Mhm.
And guess what? On the podcast listening apps, you are free to say whatever you want. Your
Yeah.
content is not going to be taken down. So you are right. It is becoming the new media that is unvarnished, and it is I would say, a very much a safe haven of free speech. People can choose to listen to you or not. And the individual listening apps, we have never seen them take down anybody's content, no matter how controversial it may be. The only thing we see is if a podcast is out of compliance with the rules for marking a show as explicit, then an individual app, and each of them would judge on their own. It's not like there is the podcast police out there that are looking at everything and take your show down everywhere. Each individual app decides on their own if they are going to, have guidelines and deem certain content to be not appropriate for their platform. And they have the right to do that. But I just have never seen that happen. The only example is you have a mature subject. And it's not even about swearing or four-letter words or anything. Okay. Like they say, the FCC has what is it? The seven dirty words you can't say on radio and all that. I know that's probably evolved over the years, but the FCC doesn't govern podcasting, and you can say whatever you want. The only difference is if you're going to have either foul language or mature subject matter. It isn't even about specific swears. It's if you're going to talk about a very adult subject, like you're going to have a podcast and you're going to interview a prostitute and talk about the business of that. I mean, I'm just making this up right now.
Right.
You better mark that episode rather, as explicit. And you can either mark an entire show as explicit or an individual episode one off if most of your show is what we call clean and you have a mature one. All you have to do is mark it as explicit, because that warns parents in particular. If you're going to listen to a podcast when you're driving the kids on that weekend trip to, Lake Tahoe or whatever, you may not want to listen to that one when little ears are going to hear it over the speakers in the car. So as long as you put that warning out, you have done your job for compliance and podcasting, and you can literally speak on any topic you want.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I had a dominatrix on, and I had to carefully craft those questions because I didn't want to be marked explicit on that. So everybody is kind of talking about the YouTube quote podcasts. And that's what I really wanted to get to the heart of today is YouTube has requirements and not really good distribution. So if you want to monetize, it has requirements. How is that different from, say, a company like yours, where you do things a little bit, a lot differently, actually?
That's a great question. There's a few things in there. I'm going to try and address each of them. So let's first address what YouTube is. Yeah, YouTube is a platform where user generated content is published. I mean, you can publish any kind of video content, but it's generally user generated, like your creator generated. You and me as creators can record a video, put it up on YouTube. It goes on their website and it goes in their app. They have apps everywhere. The advantage of YouTube is it's so widely available, their app, meaning every mobile phone, I don't know of any mobile phone operating system that doesn't have the YouTube app built into it already when you get the phone and you haven't downloaded any of their apps yet. All the smart TVs have a YouTube app built into it. Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, all these different modern content media streaming devices have YouTube in it. So that's YouTube's advantage, is worldwide name recognition and distribution. Now, you are one of, literally billions of, videos. When you post a video, you're one of many, maybe even trillions of videos, but billions of users out there that are posting content and people that are watching content on YouTube. So, how do you get found? Putting up a YouTube channel and publishing a video is only one consideration. How do you get seen, heard, and found in this noisy digital environment? And that's a bigger question, but people have to seek out your content. Their algorithms on YouTube will use many different things to decide whether to serve your content up in someone's feed. That might come from the title of your video or what's written in the description or the tags. It also is going to depend on how many people already are subscribed to your channel and how many people are finding and watching your videos. So it is really hard starting a new YouTube channel to reach the threshold. And here's where we get into part of your question about monetizing it, to be able to get ads run on your video by YouTube and have them pay you for it. The more people that watch and see the ads, you make money. You have to, and at the time that we're recording this, I want everyone to know it can change. They change these requirements from time to time, but you need to have a minimum of 1,000 subscribers of your YouTube channel and 3,000, I believe, watch hours in the last 12 months. Now, that's a running 12 months. I want to be clear. It's not, you don't have to have 3,000 hours of watch time on your videos every month. No, in the last 12 months, but every day it's going to look back at the last running 12 months. And you have to have had that minimum of 3,000 watch hours in order to qualify for, participating in YouTube's ad program to monetize your show through them. Once you achieve it, though, you absolutely can do it. But if you don't have a whole lot of people continuing to watch, you're going to make a limited amount of money. Now, here's the other big disadvantage, and this is a big distinction between podcasting, and what I mean by that is traditional podcast distribution of audio across dozens of different apps where people listen to podcast audio. Once you publish a video on YouTube, it's fixed. You cannot change that video. Your only choice is to unpublish it or delete it or leave it published. If you have new material, things have changed, you want to update something in the podcast world, you can unpublish an episode, republish it, re-edit it if you made a mistake, and then republish it. And it can have the same identity it had from the beginning. And there are a lot of advantages to that. You can also rewrite history in the podcast world. You can publish an episode now with a publication date of 3 weeks ago or 10 months ago. It doesn't really matter. YouTube does not let you do that. So understanding some differences, but the key difference in the podcast ecosystem and what we do at Podetize, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to bash YouTube. I'm actually a fan of YouTube because, hey, we all want to put our videos out and have them be seen for those that prefer to watch video. And right now, YouTube is the best place to do it, and maybe for the foreseeable future. They're huge. In the podcast ecosystem, there are many, many more apps to be distributed on. People tend to prefer one app over another. And with your podcast audio, monetization can come through putting ads in it, not just for third-party sponsors. Now, if you can get third-party sponsors to sponsor your show and they want to put ads within it, wonderful, do that. But more podcasters actually monetize their podcasts sooner than they can attract third-party sponsors when they have something in business they do, or an organization they want to support, or a nonprofit they're in support of. There are many ways you can monetize your own show. Maybe you're a speaker, author, thought leader, and you do coaching and you want to lead generate for coaching. You can put ads and promotions for your own stuff, your own calls to action, lead magnets within your podcast episodes, and change them at any time. So they don't have to live there forever. That's very old school thinking in the early days of podcasting. That's what happened. It lived there forever. You don't have to do that today. You can change your ads within your episodes every week, every month, anytime you want, with the right system, of which Podetize, I believe, is the best. But there are others that do some similar functions. So I know you asked a sort of a multi-part question there. I hope that got to most of it.
Yeah, that got most of it. And the other thing is too, I mentioned, I take what you guys do for me and I put it over on Rumble, and I have literally, they don't have the restrictions if you're a creator. So I've already made money on Rumble without 3,000 hours and, 1,000 followers over there. So, there are other platforms beside that as well where you can go and do that pretty heftily. So with YouTube, when you're calling it a podcast, they only distribute to YouTube. So can you talk about that? Because when you go with not even necessarily your company, but what is it, Lipsum? There's several others out there. You have a really mass distribution, which is helpful too. Can you talk about that?
Yes, so you're right. YouTube is a single destination just with a lot of name recognition and a lot of different apps on different devices. So that's its advantage. And of course, you can embed YouTube videos on your own web pages and things, which if you're publishing videos is a good thing to do. But it is limited. And in fact, most podcasters, even when they are publishing full-length versions of their episodes as videos on YouTube and publishing in the podcast listening apps, most of them have a lot more podcast listeners, a larger listening audience than they do a viewing audience.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's because, well, there's just a lot more listening apps, and a lot of people tend to prefer to consume content by listening only and not having to watch. They can do it while they're driving. They can do it while they're exercising at the gym or walking or bike riding or whatever it is, right? Something that is eyes free to consume content. There's a lot more opportunities to do that in our daily lives, especially if we're working people and have families and all that. I mean, I'll listen to podcasts as I'm, waking up in the morning, getting kids' lunches ready for school, and doing dishes in the kitchen over my Amazon Alexa, because that's an easy way to do that in that environment. That's just one of many, many devices podcasts are consumed on, and ways that you can do it. So with the podcast distribution system, you have an account with a company like Podetize or one of the other podcast distribution companies. You publish your content one time and it pushes out to all of these listening apps. And I'm talking about dozens of different apps, and pushes to different websites when you have players on different websites, and you can have as many of those out there as you want. So it's much easier to reach a wider audience from doing one thing in podcasting, traditional podcasting, I guess I would say, than it is with video. But the lines are getting blurred for sure between podcasting, which was always audio, and I think still is understood and more often is distributed as audio versus video. The lines are getting blurred. And our opinion at Podetize is, you know what? All of us as creators, we should want our stuff to go everywhere because you want to reach as many people. Why are you going to close yourself off to new distribution channels and ways to reach people? I mean, you don't have to, but there's another thing that YouTube is doing right now that's very confusing. And it's because YouTube was bought by Google years ago. Google had one of the more popular podcast listening apps on the Android platform called Google Podcasts. And I forget how long it's been now. It's been more than a year, maybe a year and a half. They killed it. They Google announced we're ending the Google Podcast listening app. Those of us that have been podcasters for a long time still quite puzzled by this strategy and don't really understand the good reasons why they did it. But what they've said is, okay, we're replacing it with YouTube Music because Google owns YouTube. So now there's another app, YouTube Music, that you can distribute your podcast in through the podcast ecosystem. See, with videos, you've got to upload them one at a time to YouTube yourself to publish those videos, right? But YouTube Music, you can publish from Podetize directly and from, any podcast distribution platform to YouTube Music. The strange thing is they convert it to a video. They take the audio and convert it to a video. And if you already have your podcast videos in a podcast playlist, again, in air quotes for you audio listeners, a YouTube podcast playlist, you end up with two versions, two different videos in the YouTube Music app. The one you published on YouTube where you're actually seeing you and me right here, Juliet, talking, having a nice conversation. And then you get a video version converted from audio that has just a still graphic of your show artwork playing the audio. It's what we would call in podcast world a full-length audiogram, which is generally not as interesting to video viewers to watch than is the actual real video. So this thing is happening. It's happening on YouTube. A similar thing is happening over on Spotify in the early days of video there. And you can end up with duplicates of your content and all kinds of confusion among viewers and listeners, brand confusion, content confusion. And it's not a good thing, I'll tell you right now. And there is no clear best practice or solution for this yet. We're still working it out ourselves. And so that's something that I'm going to have to leave you and your listeners today with a little uncertainty around, which is unfortunate. But even with that confusion, I'm still a believer in create your one piece of content, convert it into every different possible format that you can, and blast it out everywhere to get the widest exposure and most value possible and increase your monetization and earning potentials. That's what we do at Podetize, and we're going to continue doing, even with some of these modern, albeit flawed, distribution outlets.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And the other thing I love about you guys is you have the audio, the video, and the blog. And just within my own family, I listen to the same shows as my ex-husband because we talk about him all the time. But he does video. And I keep saying, like, you have an app on your phone. And it's same with my son. He listens to Tim Pool all the time, but he watches it on video. And I have to think that those different learning modalities really reach a bigger audience as well, because it seems like the men, just from my two men, are more visual than they are listeners, which I could take a shot at men right now, but I won't. I'll just let you intuit your own conclusions. But I'm more of a listener. They're watchers, which to me, that watching, like, why would you sit there and watch that? Don't you have better things to do than? But I've discovered that for them, it's replacing TV. The old TV model. They don't really watch TV anymore. They watch their podcasts.
Sure. And what we've learned over the years is you're correct, Juliet. Every different consumer of our content has a preference. They either prefer to watch, listen, or read. And I'm not saying that in any order of preference or popularity. I don't really know worldwide, which one's more than the other. I do know that for the majority of podcasters we support, like I said, the audio is listened to a lot more than they're getting views on YouTube. But there are exceptions to that. There are some shows that started as YouTube shows first and have a big following and are now also distributing as podcasts. But people prefer to watch, listen, or read. You need to be meeting consumers of content where they are. And if you decide you're not going to publish your podcast as a video and put it on YouTube, well, just understand there are people that aren't looking for you where you are. Same thing with people that have a YouTube show only and are not distributing it as a podcast, as long as it's, appropriate podcast content. Not every video on YouTube is appropriate to be a podcast, but for those that are a show, similar kind of format as your typical either interview podcast or solo casts, then, if you're not distributing that through the podcast ecosystem, you're leaving huge opportunity on the table. And there's a huge gap between who you're reaching and who you can be reaching, who you can be serving. And if you're in business in any way, if your podcast is in service to your business or meant to lead generate for your business, you're just, trying to run down the street with one leg tied behind your back. I mean, seriously, why would you not distribute it everywhere you could? But you're right. So at Podetize, I mean, we're a done for you distribution platform of podcasts. We don't have to produce your content. Anybody who has a producer or they edit themselves can publish their content on Podetize. But as a company, we, for many, hundreds of customers, provide done for you service. So they just record their raw video and audio recordings, upload them, and they're done. And we take that, produce it, publish it in all different formats and convert it. Obviously, audio, video, a lot of social share assets and graphics and video clips, things like that. But the blog post is the most least understood or misunderstood part of this. And it actually, for every podcaster, and especially if you are in business, it is the greatest value you'll get out of that content. And I'll just quickly state why, and then, we can move on. But your podcast episodes and YouTube videos are only searchable by what's in their titles and their descriptions. So what you say within the recording is not searchable, doesn't factor into search. As sophisticated as Google is, as sophisticated as YouTube search is. And by the way, the podcast listening apps, one of their unfortunate realities is they're really not the best search engines out there. They're very basic and limited. So you're not going to be found for what you're saying in your episodes unless that is converted into text and published as a blog on your website. And if you're a podcaster or a content creator and you don't have a website that's the home for your show, that's your first mistake. And you really, if you're serious about doing this, and this isn't just an experiment, you really need to get a website if you don't have one and make it the home for your podcast, because the website is where you will be found by many, many more people than are even going into a listening app and searching on topics or going into YouTube. Where do people still today go first to search? Google. And the language of Google, well, yes, they'll serve up videos, but again, I told you, those videos, they're only serving them up based on what's in the titles and descriptions. So you create a long format blog post, what we call a verbal SEO blog post, that's converting what's said into text. And it's not 100%. It's like 90% what was said, because it's not, it's cleaned up, quality improved, made easier to read, but it unlocks the majority of what was said. You build equity in your website and keyword rankings and free unique visitors every month sent by Google, because those people searched on something in alignment with what was said in one of your episodes. Mm-hmm. So you have an episode landing page for every episode, a blog post for every episode. The video's there, the audio's there, the text is there. That's where they can watch, listen, or read. And that will long-term serve your business, bring you more leads, bring you more listeners, more viewers of your show than anything else. That's the marathon of podcasting. The sprint is putting it out today on the listening apps, putting it out today on YouTube. pushing it out today, social. The marathon, the long-term value is in the blog. So, all right,
No,
that's the big thing, right?
yeah, and I agree with that. I usually take the transcript that I get and run it through AI to get my social media points, to get my, and sometimes even keywords, because even though you have static keywords in my YouTube, sometimes it'll pick up, like I use TubeBuddy for that. It'll pick up other keywords that are endemic to just that episode that'll help people find it as well. By the way, you guys, that is a fabulous tool. I think they just changed the parameters this year because I just noticed that I have much less. I need to pay more money if I want to get my old. I think they changed their pricing structure basically.
Well,
So you
but
don't get
TubeBuddy
as
is a great tool. I mean, you have to be willing to spend a little more time on every episode to use it, but when you do, it's going to make your video actually be seen by more people a number of different ways. So no, we're fans of TubeBuddy and use it as well. Yeah, there's so many things you can do with your episodes to get exposure. I mean, pull quotes from them that can be used on X as tweets. Do they still call them tweets, even though it's X?
I don't know what the, I'm not on X, but
Well, but or you have quote graphics that can go on Instagram and or any other social channel. You have the video clips. The blog itself is a wonderful thing to share because when you have a unique image, it populates in the social post and it's clickable. It makes everybody click back to your website for that social post. So many different things you can do to get exposure and incentivize your episode guests to share your show with their audience because maybe you create a quote graphic of something you said about the guest that makes them look really good, and then I'll go when this publisher said, hey world, look what Juliet said about me, and I publish a graphic like that, and everybody learns about your show. And that's the whole point, is just getting more people to share it, more people to be aware of it. If you're going to put the effort in to bring your message to the world, to share your knowledge, or to help bring out stories from guests that will serve your community, whatever it is your goal of podcasting is, then why not do the best job possible and put it out everywhere in every different way? I mean, the biggest thing I come across, I meet with like 6 or 8 podcasters every day and do, existing podcasters, not just people wanting to start a new one, and do what I call a power podcast appraisal, because most shows people watch, they didn't really get a lot of support from people who have experience, and they're not getting a lot of, listens right away, and they don't understand why. Well, usually in a very quick assessment, I can see 3 or 4 things that are pretty easy things they can fix, like right that day if they want to, and be found by more listeners tomorrow. It's there are some things that are easy to do like that. But when I find someone like I did yesterday, Juliet, I met with somebody who has 380 episodes that they've done. They've been doing it for 10 years. Okay. Almost as long as I've been podcasting. And they have no blogs. And they have great content that is still relevant today. That's the biggest untapped gold mine of data to feed your website. And oh, don't forget, people are finding all of us content creators through ChatGPT and Gemini AI generative searches. Why? AI needs to keep feeding itself with new content. And where's it getting that content? Primary sources, web pages. So you create a blog for a new episode, gets indexed by Google for standard Google search, but it's also feeding AI. And I, every week now, have at least one person that says they learned about me from either they say ChatGPT or an AI search. And I don't even have that as an option for how did you hear about us? They're using the other field and typing in AI search or ChatGPT. That's happening, and the people with the blogs and the content are winning and are, getting those things first, that kind of value first. So all kinds of value in the blog, like you were saying.
Yeah, no, there definitely is. And I actually take that blog and run it through I have way too many tools. Perplexity.
Mm-hmm.
Perplexity will give you citations, which is another play that probably the
That's a
chat
great one.
GPT or yeah, or Perplexity. But there are such great tools out there now too. So, Opus.pro, getting those really nice clips that you can promote. We just started using Video Tap too, which I think VideoTap stole your blog, the way you guys do blogs. Their format looks, I was showing Tracy a couple weeks ago, it looks exactly like what you guys do. And I kind of was like, did they steal this from you?
Well, it's about time someone's been doing it because we've been doing this for 10 years. And I've always been shocked over the years. How come no one's really gone to school on all the things we do for a blog?
Yeah.
Very few people have, very few companies do it because it's a lot of work. Now, AI may be making that a little easier. I'll be interested to take a look at this too. It's probably not doing everything we do, but maybe it's getting 80% of the way there. Sure, maybe.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend like that using that in lieu of you guys, but it literally will give me email ideas. It'll write an article. So that's mainly where I'm using it, is
Uh,
taking the article, the blog that it writes for me, and using it in our magazines. Or I'll take it and use it. Like, I think I'm part of 4 different magazines, other people's magazines. So I will use it to write an article for them. So
Well, that's a wonderful thing to do. And yeah, just so your audience understands, our verbal SEO blog posts are not an article. I want to be very
right.
clear about that. We are not creating articles based on the episode. We're creating something that's very intentional. We really don't expect 99.9% of people that go to that blog to read it. Some will, but
Mhm.
it is unlocking what was said, and it's the imperfect grammar and word order of human speech.
Yeah.
Now we clean it up so it's not horrible, right? It's cleaned up, made easier to read, and it doesn't have every little thing in it because that would be mind numbing to read that, honestly. But the point is, Google cares about that text that came from human speech. They rank it highly and they send traffic to your website. So it's 80% just to generate visitors to your website. Once they get there, 99% of them are going to either watch that video or listen to that podcast. They're not going to read through that text, but they might scroll through to get, one of the important links to one of the companies that's mentioned or one of the services. Like in this one, you talked about Perplexity. There'll be a link to that in the blog for this episode. People might come there and use your post as a resource. That's about 20% of the traffic that, goes there for that reason. The rest comes from Google. And all it is raising awareness of you, your show, your business. So yeah, those are great tools and by all means, if you have a way to distribute articles based on your podcast, whether it's on Substack or a magazine like you're doing, Juliet, or, some other website that you're going to be a contributing writer to, absolutely. If you've got the time to do that and use some of these tools, go and do that. That's another good thing to do. Although you'll be helping drive traffic to Substack if you put it there, right? And again, we're bigger fans of all roads leading back to your own website because
Yeah.
that's where you're going to benefit.
Yeah, I don't use Substack, but well, the difference I see in it is instead of me sitting down and, what is the topic and what am I going to write, running that through and having it write its own article is amazing. And of course, I have to go back through and kind of edit and make it more human, more my voice. So, Tom, if we want to explore this further and look into, you guys and having you do the work for us on the DIY, and you have a do-it-yourself version as well. Where do we find you? How do we book an appointment?
So podetize.com, if you're a do-yourselfer just looking for the most advanced hosting platform with the best analytics and unique features others don't have, then there's a menu at the top. You can check out our different hosting services. And some of you, there's actually something wonderful for podcasters that are willing to put just a little money into marketing their shows to be found by more listeners. A wonderful new program we have called Promocast that will help you do that. But for anyone else that is, looking for support, who doesn't have the time to put all the effort in to do all the audio editing, video editing, finding the quotes, the highlights, the video clips, creating a blog, all those things. I mean, those take time. And most people probably barely have time to record the content,
Yeah.
especially if you're in business in some way. Go to podetize.com homepage, scroll down about 2/3 of the way down. It's a booking calendar right there where you can book a free strategy call. So that's what I would recommend.
Just quickly, Promocast, is that where you guys are running ads on like-minded shows for discovery?
No, it's a little
Okay.
different. Promocast is where we are running ads for your podcast across a network of more than 1,000 mobile phone apps. And I'm not talking about podcast apps. These are all kinds of general use apps. There's business apps and health and wellness apps and sports apps and legal apps and all sorts of things. Just as long as your ideal profile listener is a mobile phone user, which I think is pretty much everybody these days, undoubtedly they're using half a dozen or a dozen of these different apps where they must watch and listen to an ad periodically to keep using the app. And so we put ads for the show, either playing a highlight clip or an actual call to action. Here's the show, what it's about, click to learn more type of thing. And when people click, we send them wherever the podcaster wants them to go. Usually it's a podcast page on their own website, which has a player where everybody can play any episode right there. And it might even have, you know, a YouTube playlist there. So if people prefer to watch, they would watch. But you for sure the podcast audio player there with every episode. And that is working. We provide the analytics for the ad impressions and the clicks from those ads. So you understand how it's converting, and then watch your listening audience grow month over month just because you're raising awareness with people who didn't know who you were and didn't know what your show was yet.
Right.
And they click and try it. If they like it, they subscribe. So customers in that program get month over month increase in listenership that's measurable. And it's completely passive. It takes no work on the part of the podcast to do it. You just sign up. It's a very reasonably low monthly price for a paid marketing program that is getting results.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Tom, thank you so much for sharing all this information today. Hopefully you guys learned something.
Thank you so much for having me, Juliet. It was a lot of fun.